live to your slides. Is that still right?
That's the idea. That's the idea. If the line holds, I will do my best.
Otherwise, I have lined up all the presentations and videos here on my screen and will share the screen, and whoever is not able to run it themselves, I will do it quickly from my computer.
Okay. But you will then grant access to the screen. You will basically transfer the rights to us, and then we basically give access to our desktop, right?
Yes, yes, okay. Now that has to be done by the people in Yakutsk. You make sure that everyone has the access to share the screen. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but I think in most cases, I mean, first the organizer have to grant the access, and then we can
Yes.
press on the green button.
But the Northern Forum is running this workshop, so they need to get access to this.
Okay.
Do we have the technicians from the Northern Forum with us? And do they know that everyone can share their screen?
Yes, Leah will give the access for sharing screen.
Okay.
Leah.
Okay, at least I tested it out already, so it worked for me, so it should also work for you, Georg.
Okay, let's see.
So we have 3 minutes before we start. Who would like to start from the Northern Forum and give a welcome to everyone?
Dariana Maximova is coming. She will be co-moderator for the first half. She just came now, so please.
So she should...
So I'm here. Okay.
Okay, yes, there you are. So then I recommend you will start in 2 or 3 minutes sharp, and then I will take over and introduce this workshop.
So, sorry, I start.
Yeah, you can just say a few welcome words, and then I will introduce the workshop and will continue to moderate.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I understand Vladimir is joining in later.
Yes, he will be later because of the plenary session. He is a moderator now of the plenary session. So we can, 2 minutes, in 2 minutes.
And Peter, Oliver is the first, goes first.
That's right, yes, Oliver, and you will be second. I put on the chat also the link to our website where you find the whole agenda again. So if you look at the chat or have in parallel the agenda, you know when you are speaking. So we are all on this screen, and not anyone is sitting in a room where you have people physically participating at this meeting.
So we have 16 people.
How many people are sitting beside you, Diana?
With me?
Yes.
Plus one will be here in a few minutes.
So these people which...
Диана, вас не слышно. Включите, пожалуйста, микрофон.
Now I see also Sergey. Hello, Sergey.
А сейчас меня слышно?
Режим перевода. Выберите русский канал.
Ага. У меня сейчас слышно, да?
Слышно, но очень тихо.
Сейчас слышно?
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Let's start the meeting.
Okay. Добрый день, добрый вечер.
Hello and good evening, dear colleagues. Good day. Today, it's the second day of the third Northern Sustainable Development Forum. And we have 4 days all in all. And right now, the plenary session is coming to an end. And it is a pleasure to gather for the third time. The first forum took place in 2019. My name is Dariana Maximova. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Northern Forum, and it's a pleasure to greet you here at this very important event because I myself, I am very excited about developing tourism in the Sakha Republic. And for us, discussion of such important issues and aspects and new projects. So for us, it is very important. Today, we will have a webinar, the role and potential of Arctic regions to support and implement the 30 by 30 goal with support of tourism. The co-organizers of this event are the Linking Tourism and Conservation Norway and Campaign for Nature. Moderators of this session are Peter Prakash, founder and chairman of the Board of Linking Tourism and Conservation, and also Vladimir Vasilyev, executive director of the Northern Forum. But unfortunately, right now, Mr. Vasilyev is finishing to moderate the plenary. That's why I am here on his behalf, and I greet you. And I have the honor to greet you on his behalf. For the Northern Forum, this topic is very important. And today we will have 12 speakers who are all very important for us as partners in developing this domain. And I would like to dive into your program, and I would like to wish everyone prolific work. And I now give the floor to our key moderator, Peter Prakash, Linking Tourism and Conservation, Norway. Please, Peter.
Thank you very much, Diana. I just have a question whether the translation is also working. I didn't get the English translation. Can you make sure that everyone gets the translation? Diana?
Yeah, Peter, there's this little
У
button.
меня стоит русский язык. Сейчас я переключу.
I have Russian. I will now switch into English and check it.
And
Я
thank you very much
переключила
for
на
the
английский.
introduction.
Сейчас.
We have put together, Vladimir Vasilyev and myself, a quite interesting set of speakers who will talk about the role and potential of the Arctic region to support and implement the so-called 30 by 30 goal. What that 30 by 30 goal will be and is will be explained later, and how that will be supported by tourism. I will just you all probably know that we have agreed 2015 to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And 2 of these goals, number 14 and 15, are related to biodiversity. And there is an important target within these goals, which formally until 2020 was the so-called Aichi Target 11, that we should have 17% on land and 10% of the seas properly protected. This target needs to be changed now and adapted, and that will happen at the COP15 of the Convention on Biological Diversity, which will take place later on in China in spring. And it is most likely that we will then agree that 30% of both land and seas will be protected or should be protected by 2030. And that is actually also the main focus of the organization linking tourism and conservation, which here partners with the Northern Sustainable Development Forum on this workshop. And we as LTNC profile worldwide examples where actually tourism is supporting protected areas. So they should also in the future make a strong contribution to this goal. And at this workshop, we want to find out what is actually happening. Wait a minute, this is not going further. Okay. How this the Arctic can become actually a forerunner to reach this 30 by 30 goal with support of tourism. So we will come directly to our speakers now, and we have told everyone that we have not more than 8 minutes each. And I invite now Oliver Hillel from the Secretariat of the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, to explain right away where the discussions are in the CBD for getting this target agreed by all nations in the world. Oliver, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Peter. I hope you can see me.
Yes, we see you.
Yes, excellent. It's a real pleasure to be here and to share with you both the urgency and the opportunity of this event, where we are discussing how the tourism sector can make a significant contribution to the tremendously important goal of protecting 30% of the globe in 10 years' time, less, 9 years' time. So first of all, I want to reiterate that the Convention on Biological Diversity is responding to an emergency, the loss of species and ecosystems.
Recording in progress.
To the level of 70%.
Recording stopped.
In 50 years. We're losing 70% of species
Recording in progress.
Biomass in very short time. So this is an emergency. So the CBD has seen that the previous goal of protecting only 17% of land and 10%, just as Peter was explaining to us, is not sufficient. We need to reach 30%, and some countries are better positioned than others to do that. But it is essential to reach that goal. The second point to make is that this will not only be protected areas in the legally established and previously established form. We're talking also of other effective area-based conservation measures. So even if you establish an eco-lodge or a tourism destination and use some of the areas in a green way without necessarily declaring them a municipal or state protected area, even if you just declare it as a private reserve, that is a contribution to the goal of 30%. This is now, Peter was talking about target the Aichi target 11. This is now target 2 in the new post-2020 global biodiversity framework, which is currently being discussed in the United Nations. And so to that goal of protecting 30% of land and sea, the only market-based access solution is tourism. There's a good reason for when we value nature, one of the most effective ways to provide a monetary value to nature is called willingness to pay methodology. And the willingness to pay methodology is basically tourism. It means how much would you be willing to pay to visit a certain park? This is absolutely the way to bring, there's no other measure. We have been trying that. In my lifetime, I've worked with tourism for a long time. There have been discussions of non-timber forest products. There has been discussion of payment for ecosystem services. But at the end of the day, tourism is the only way, through entrance fees to parks, through concessions. If you don't want to operate tourism in your area, you can hire others to do that, or even through public-private partnerships, which is where a public area is offered for the investment of private partners, so that the tourism use of a part of the entire area to be conserved finances the entirety of that protected area. In 2010, with Conservation International, we made a calculation that if tourism to parks, tourism that goes with the intention of visiting a park, whether they pay for that or not, but they're going to visit that park, if 5% of the profits of tourism to parks was applied to the conservation of those areas, we would have our ambitious 30-30 plan financed. Is as easy as that. Tourism can do it. In fact, it is the only market-based mechanism that can reach the 30-by-30 plan. So it's very important that this becomes very clear in this discussion right up front, based on the negotiations that the Convention on Biological Diversity has already had with its 196 national governments, 195 plus the European Union. So in these terms, it's also very important that the Convention has adopted tourism sector as one of the 9 economic sectors that can help mainstream biodiversity into all sectors and across all levels of governance. So as part of the long-term approach to mainstreaming in the Convention, the tourism sector is invited to contribute, of course, also to the ambition of 30-by-30, 30% by 2030. The last point I wanted to raise in this discussion to begin and to provoke the reaction of our other speakers is the unique opportunity for the Northern Sustainable Development Forum to act here. Because if you have, the Arctic Council as a very unique group of governments and other players as well, the Northern Forum is very clearly at the decentralized level. The participants in the Northern Forum are mostly subnational governments, local governments, and tour operators and people on the ground. So the place to discuss the role of tourism, the unique role of tourism in ensuring that the last remaining multilaterally governed area in the world, which is the Arctic, so that the Arctic can benefit in its protected areas, which can still be defined. Many other areas in the world, you cannot find anymore the perspective for protected areas. In the Arctic, you can, and we need to. So the Northern Forum very specifically is critically invited by the Convention on Biological Diversity to find the ways and means to ensure that the tourism flows that will come can finance our ambitious goals of 30-by-30. It's going to be a different kind of tourism than the one that we are used to. Subsidies and low-cost airlines may change, but the Arctic is exactly the destination where this has been trained already. The Arctic has never benefited from massive volumes of tourism. So the Arctic is exactly the place where there is a need to establish the 30-by-30 goal and where tourism can play an absolutely unique role in that. So from the perspective of the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity on behalf of Dr. Elizabeth Mrema, the Executive Secretary, I'm here to offer support to the Northern Forum and its players in trying to formulate plans, development plans for area-based conservation that help us reach this very ambitious goal. And I know that Georg and others will detail more the campaign for nature. All I want to say is the Secretariat and the Convention are fully in support of the goals of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. And as this is one of the most important goals which have to be decided by all nations, we are now hearing Georg Schweider, who runs the Campaign for Nature At least he coordinates all the European countries on that and can tell you that already more than 70 countries in the world are behind this huge important goal. Oliver, you have Georg, you have you can speak.
Thank you, Peter. What is missing now is that I don't have access to, here it says the host has rejected basically providing the screen. So,
and the host
created. So the rights have to be transferred to me, otherwise I cannot activate my screen.
I have tried it out now on my screen. I can actually do that. Can you see?
You can do it now. Please check it.
Can you do that now, Georg? Can you try?
I think it works now.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
Thank you. Let me just see here. Good. Just one sec. So we're all in business here. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in these virtual times of meeting. Very, very happy to be with you and give you, in my presentation, basically a very, very short overview of the benefits of 30 by 30 and the potential role that tourism can play and in our mind should play, building very much on what Oliver just said. Before doing that, let me just briefly tell you who we are and what we do. So the Campaign for Nature is an initiative funded by the Wyss Foundation. We work in very, very close partnership with National Geographic, in particular when it comes to communication outreach. And our primary goal is to make sure that conference and parties to the CBD agree in Kunming next year, in spring next year, to put at least 30% of the earthland and seas under effective protection. That's our primary goal of the Campaign for Nature. There's now very, very solid evidence that we can say with a very, very high level of confidence that they're implementing 30 by 30 would basically mean a quadruple win for people and nature. Overwhelming evidence have been provided that 30 by 30 going to be critical to halt the loss of biodiversity. Depending on the studies you look at, scientists say between 70 and 80% of the species considered in the study could actually be preserved if we put the new protected areas and the OECMs that Oliver mentioned into the right places. Scientists are also very clear that 30 by 30 going to be key for mitigating and adapting to climate change. A UNEP WCMC study end of last year, they calculated, again, if you put the protected areas in the right places, that we could safeguard about 500 gigatons of very, very important global carbon stocks. 500 gigatons, that's the equivalent of 35 times the annual emissions of China. And 30 by 30 is going to be a very great health insurance against the further pandemics. Again, studies have shown that the spillover of zoonotic diseases on animals and humans is happening in tropical forests where they're degraded if they're destroyed. So if you put those under protection, you have a great health insurance. And last but not least, and I come to that aspect a little bit later, again, there are economic and financial benefits that outweigh the costs of implementing 30 by 30 by at least 5 to 1. So that's a compelling economic and financial case to be made. What is very, very key is that we take a strategic approach at putting 30 by 30 into place once the parties have agreed. Because there are places and countries that are more important than others when it comes to biodiversity conservation, wilderness areas, global carbon sinks. So if you look at global carbon sinks, there are probably two main areas that span the globe. One is actually in the Arctic in the north, and then the other one is in the tropical south, the tropical forest belt. When it comes to biodiversity conservation, the hotspots harboring about 75 to 80% of all species, all biodiversity, they're clearly located in the tropical forest belt. Very similar picture. When you look at the global risk areas for future pandemics, there's a huge overlap with the hotspots for biodiversity. And last but not least, and that's again very relevant to the Arctic, the wilderness areas, the global wilderness, that's where wilderness still is left. And this is very crucial for ecological processes, large-scale evolutionary processes. There are two belts, one in the north in the Arctic, and the other one is in the tropical south. So it's very, very key that we take a strategic approach and make sure we harvest the highest return on investment by making sure the areas, the new protected areas, are put in the right places to make sure biodiversity, carbon stocks are conserved, and we have a good health insurance. I probably don't have to convince anyone here in the audience that protected areas do their job when it comes to biodiversity conservation. Many scientists, many conservationists call them the backbone of conservation, of biodiversity conservation. But there is a big but, and that but relates to adequate financial resources. Resources that have to be stable, that have to be committed in the long run. Otherwise, you see pictures of this, where you have basically deteriorating infrastructure, deteriorating means of transportation. So protected areas are not in a position to actually reach your objectives and do their job in protected biodiversity and securing vital ecosystem services. And this is where touring comes into play. Again, repeating some of the messages that Oliver has already conveyed. Because I would say nature-based tourism is transforming protected areas in a very, very viable economic and financial asset. And I just want to refer to three main studies that have been done just recently. There's a BMZ study that was just launched in August of this year, particularly looking at Africa. And they have found that in 2015, over 17 million visitors visiting protected areas and spending in an excess of $50 billion US, sustaining 8 to 10 million jobs. This study also says these numbers would significantly increase if we put 30 by 30 into place. And there was a World Bank report earlier this year for South America showing very, very similar picture. For every dollar invested into protected areas and promoting sustainable tourism, the rate of return is at least 6 to 1. And probably the most comprehensive study so far done, looking at particular at what 30 by 30 would mean if it's implemented, clearly showed that the benefits would outweigh the cost by 5 to 1. And here again, nature-based tourism has been identified as the key driver of these huge economic benefits, outcompeting traditional land use practices like fisheries in the oceans, forestry, and agriculture. So the question is, does the nature-based tourism sector live up to its role? And so far, the answer is no, unfortunately. So if you look at the big bubble here on the right-hand side, that basically shows the volume of revenues generated by nature-based tourism. It's about around $600 billion US on average every year. On the left-hand side, you see the little greener bubble that shows in comparison how much it would cost to effectively implement 30 by 30 by 2030. And that right now, only 2%, so this little fraction here of the total revenues are actually reinvested into protected areas. And as Oliver pointed out, that number has to increase significantly. And we believe there are three main good reasons for that. Nature-based tourism should have a self-interest in ensuring the effective management of protected areas. The better a protected area is managed, the more attractive it is for the tourists, because wildlife will be maintained, the habitat will be maintained, so it's very attractive for tourists to actually see those areas. Oliver, or no, it was Peter who also showed what is the difference between the Aichi target and the 30 by 30. So it's basically doubling in the marine area, tripling the area under protection. So we say it basically doubles the business opportunities for the nature-based tourism sector. So imagine from 600, you would go to 1.2 billion if nature-based tourism is implemented there. So for us, 30 by 30 provides a very, very attractive business proposition for the nature-based tourism sector. Let me report on good signs here in terms of progress made. So as I already pointed out, leading science and economists are urging political leaders to make 30 by 30 a reality. And more than 70 plus countries now have followed that call and joined the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. That's a coalition of parties to the CBD that support and promote 30 by 30. The recent IUCN World Conservation Congress sent a very, very strong signal towards Kunming by endorsing 30 by 30 explicitly in their final communique. And then just last week at Anger, a historic pledge has been made by philanthropists, pledging $5 billion for the implementation of 30 by 30. So some people have seen that the benefits, if the investments are made, are there. Peter talked about the role of the Arctic as a potential frontrunner. And I want to mention here beforehand the actually visionary approach the Sakha Republic, our host today, has taken to expansion of net protected area network. In 1996, the president of the Sakha Republic, Mikhail Nikolaev, committed to put 25% of the most important areas for biodiversity under effective protection. And from what I learned is that today the Sakha Republic has overachieved this commitment. That's what I call being a front runner or first mover. And the Sakha Republic has shown it can be done. And by putting such huge areas under protection, the Sakha Republic had also major contribution to indigenous people like the Evenks, the Tatars, and the Yakuts by making sure their traditional ways of living can be maintained by granting rights to fishing, hunting, and reindeer herding. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Georg. If you get to, and you have both now from Oliver and Georg heard about the importance that we all agree in the future COP15 meeting of the CBD on this important goal if we want to get biodiversity not going down furthermore. This is an extremely important goal. And if we now look into the Arctic, we have now the privilege to have the executive secretary of the Conservation and of Flora and Fauna program of the Arctic Council. And you know that this Northern Sustainable Development Forum is also seen as an official meeting within the Arctic Council procedures, as Russia is now chairing it. So Tom, you can tell us where the Arctic is in terms of protecting their territories, and where do you think the Arctic countries are also supporting the 30 by 30 goal?
My computer screen seems to have, but at least you can see my screen, even though you see it in, sorry, 2 seconds there.
Georg,
okay?
I think, yes, so now you can share your screen, Tom. Yes,
apologies, 2 seconds.
Again, in between, if people have questions to Oliver or Georg or later on to other speakers, please put those questions into the chat, and the speakers may also answer your questions right away on the chat.
Okay, thanks, Peter, and apologies for the small technical hiccup. It wouldn't be an online meeting if something didn't happen. Yes. But so as Peter said, my name is Tom, and I work with the Biodiversity Working Group in the Arctic Council. And I'm just going to talk briefly about work that the Council is doing when it comes to protected areas and conservation measures. And I think an important point to note with regards to this is that the Arctic Council, for the first time in its history, agreed upon earlier this year on a strategic plan to guide its activities until 2030. And one of the goals of that plan explicitly is focused on protection of biodiversity, ecosystems, and their habitats. But also, importantly for our discussion here, is that it has a specific action focused on the need to develop and promote more responsible approaches to environmentally and culturally sustainable tourism. So the whole topic of our talk here today, in many ways, of sustainable tourism, has been highlighted and lifted up in the Council's work, at least in its strategic plan. And there are a couple of other strategic plans that are very important in this context when it comes to the 30 by 30 goal, is that there is an Arctic Marine Strategic Plan run by our colleagues in PAIM, and also an action plan for biodiversity for the Council as a whole. And these documents provide the framework or the guidance for the Council's work when it comes to biodiversity, and it touches on aspects of tourism throughout those. And we're currently in the process of developing a new action plan for biodiversity for the Council, which will be aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework, which hopefully will be agreed upon soon. So there should be clear linkages between the work of the Council and what the Convention on Biological Diversity is doing in this regard. So there are a whole range of different activities ongoing within the Council which touch upon the issue of protected areas, but also increasingly on the issue of other effective area-based conservation measures. Much of the work that addresses these issues is conducted within two parts of the Council, within CAF, and also an awful lot is going on within the protection of the Arctic Marine Environment Working Group. And there we're looking at producing work on status and trends in Arctic protected areas to try and understand the coverage and extent of protection across the Arctic. We've just launched an initiative that's starting to look at effective area-based conservation measures. There's a Marine Protected Areas framework that's being implemented. And we're also looking at issues where we try to identify areas that are sensitive to shipping or to specific species. So there's a whole body of work that's starting to come true within the Council, which touches upon the issues of tourism and sustainable uses and management of the Arctic environment. To give you an idea of the sensitivity and the extent of some of these issues, I'm a geographer, so I always like to show maps on every short presentation. And this particular map here shows you the ecologically, biologically significant areas that were identified through the Convention on Biological Diversity. But all those green areas also show those areas that were identified as being sensitive to shipping in the Arctic for whatever reason, be it migratory pathways, be it breeding areas, a whole range of different reasons. But you can see that an awful lot of the marine Arctic is sensitive in some shape or form. So when it comes to trying to mainstream biodiversity into different industries, be that tourism, mining, or whatever, it's an increasingly important area of work that we're looking at. We're also within the Arctic Council currently preparing an update to the Arctic Protected Areas report, indicator report that we give out every few years. And the map on the screen on the left just shows you some of the preliminary outcomes of that work, where all of the protected areas, both on land and marine, are categorized after their IUCN management category. And the diagram on the right-hand side shows you how the Arctic fared when it came to the Aichi targets from the Convention on Biological Diversity, where you can see that at least in terms of extent and coverage, protected areas fell short of that target, whereas they exceeded a terrestrial target. And of course, 30 by 30 gives us yet another milestone or a moving target, and there's still an awful lot of work to go until we reach that. In addition to looking at issues with regards to protected areas and conservation measures, there's an increasing focus in the Council when it comes to biodiversity at looking at on-the-ground conservation issues. And this map here, I think, illustrates that very well. This is a map that illustrates the work that we do within our Arctic Migratory Birds Programme, where we've identified species of conservation concern. As you can see, many of them in the Russian north and around the Sakha Republic as well. And the challenge is that if these species are protected in the north, but they're not when they travel down in the winter months to the southern hemisphere, then our conservation efforts are limited. And so we have a whole program of work focused on working with Arctic and non-Arctic states to find a way to ensure more sustainable conservation. And this is an area that might touch on tourism as well, because it's quite a significant area of work. And here you can see the linkages between north and south. You can see the reasons why people in the southern hemisphere should be concerned about what happens in the north when it comes to specific bird species. And I think I've expanded my 8 minutes already, Peter. But so I'll keep it short
and
there.
we have a very good impression that the Arctic is already far ahead in setting up protected areas. We heard already from Georg also that Yakutia in particular, but Russia also altogether is quite far in having protected huge areas, partly also as very strict protected areas as Zapovietniks. So altogether, the Arctic is in a brilliant position to bring up the protected areas to a scale of 30% very fast. And I strongly believe that this will be happening even before 2030. And I also know that the Arctic countries, or most of the Arctic, or probably almost all the Arctic countries, I haven't heard from Russia, have agreed already that they will support this 30 by 30 goal. We have now also the privilege to have Sergei Rybakov from the Slava Fetisov Foundation, which can probably tell us a little bit more where Russia is on this issue and what we can expect from Russia in particular on this in this respect.
Питер, спасибо огромное. Слышно меня?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Peter, for organizing this event, and I thank the organizers of this forum. You are undertaking this great event every year. You show what is happening here in Russia, in the north of the world, and we also get the experience of the global experts. And also I would like to thank all the speakers. Many of you I have the honor to know, or even I have worked with some of you. It's a pleasure to be here. I will go back to what Oliver mentioned, the Conference of Parties that awaits us this year. Currently, world and the Arctic are facing a triple crisis: climate change and its impact, the rate of biodiversity extinction, and pollution, water, air, soils, and plastic, to which the UN pays much attention. We will be considering all of these questions at two conferences in October in China on the biodiversity conference and the 26th conference of the parties. From our point of view, these two conventions are very linked. They were incepted as such, but we are sure that conservation of nature and biodiversity should be considered as one immediate urgent task for the entire humanity. Without preserving the environment, we cannot fight climate change. And according to forecasts, even if we reach neutrality, carbon neutrality, it doesn't matter, maybe tomorrow, we'll still have another 50 years to restore, to go back to the nature that we used to have in order to get rid of all the CO2 which is in the atmosphere now, which means that the next generation will be living under the risks of climate change. When we met this year in preparation for the conferences with the president of COP, Oleg Sharma, and the special representative of the US President John Kerry, we mentioned that it's not adequate to consider only climate change, and transition to new energy reality. We have to talk about two directions at once. First one, decarbonization, transition to decarbonization, and the natural solutions of CO2 that is already accumulated in our atmosphere. For this, we promote several initiatives. One of them is the Decade of Restoration of Biodiversity by UN, a joint program of UNEP, and which was announced this year and supported by the Secretary General. We support it completely. The next decade will be the Decade of Restoration of Ecosystems. And in July of this year, we sent a letter to the President of Russia about, we asked him to support this Decade of Ecosystem Restoration in Russia as well, to support the UN's initiatives. I think it's one of the key initiatives that we are having right now in the world. The second, not less important, that we are discussing today, that we are supporting for many years, it's to protect 30% of the planet by this indicated date. Private capital has joined to support this. Over 70 countries do support it, yes, and this will be discussed at biodiversity, and I think it will be one of the target goals for the current decade. We also not only support this initiative, but last week, together in a joint letter from the Association of Nature Protection of Russia, we and the Greenpeace of Russia, WWF of Russia, three major environmental organizations, we wrote a letter to the president to personally take part in the biodiversity conference in China. It will be online, but we're sure that our country needs to show that we understand what nature is, what the resources are, and what resources we have, and that we value them at the highest level. Our standpoint is that Russia is the ecological donor of the entire world, and the well-being of Russia means well-being of the entire world. Without it, the well-being in the world is not possible. But if the nature in Russia is not protected, it's not possible, and sustainable tourism plays really a key role in this, because it helps you to find finance, to take it off the shoulders of the state, to ensure our shared goals. We support tourism, we support different international tourism initiatives. We're holding conferences on sustainable tourism in Rosa Hutar in Sochi. And again, this year we'll be discussing issues of sustainable tourism, Arctic, because not only everything that happens in the Arctic influences everything in the world, but also because the Arctic is a place where countries actually can have a very positive dialogue. We can see it in sustainable tourism, we can see it in especially protected marine zones, we can see it in responsible financing. So for us, conservation of the Arctic, development of responsible tourism in this region, and protection of the nature that we have, for us, it is a priority. And once again, I would like to thank you for this venue to speak, and I would like to wish all the participants a successful event. And Peter, thank you so much for your standing support.
Thank you very much, Sergio. And rightfully said, Russia is the largest country in the world with huge amount of wilderness, which I had the privilege to had some looks in. Certainly plays an important role and will be key to other nations in the world to persuade them to go for the 30 by 30 goal. So we count on Russia very much. And we will now dive further into Russia by showing you a film from Andrei Maximov, or parts of what he is doing as a filmmaker and photographer. I share now my screen and will run his presentation from my screen, as he is not with us today, but he has supplied us with his video. So I hope it will run. Yes, here it is.
Коллеги, добрый день. Меня зовут Андрей Максимов. Я биолог, географ, член
Hello, I'm Andrei Maximov.
основатель
The founder of
организации Русское общество сохранения
NGO,
теперь уже оператор и
Russian
режиссер
Society for the Conservation and Study of
научно-популярных фильмов
Birds,
о природе.
I
Я очень
nature.
рад
So
участию
I
в
am very
мероприятии,
happy
даже в
to be
таком
part
кратком
of this
записи. И я
event,
постараюсь сейчас
even
вам
if I am
рассказать
doing
о том, что в
pre-filmed
смысле
way.
научных природоохранных проектов
I would like to tell about
на южных
what is happening in Chukotka, what kind of programs are happening, and
в этом регионе и вообще географию, биологию вообще. На юге автономного округа находится Анадырский район.
There is a region which is called
Побережье его от села Хатырка до поселка Берега. Это вот область Хатырка. Наших это выяснили, что такой вид птиц, как кулик-лопатень, находится на грани исчезновения. Его численность за 40 лет сократилась почти на 10%, и сейчас осталось в природе приблизительно 10 пар этой птицы, которая является гнездовым эндемиком России, то есть гнездится только в России. Ученые обеспокоены были этим, создалась огромная группа, большая группа рабочих по сохранению кулик-лопатень. Она международная, как минимум 5 участников, а может быть и больше уже. И это проект природоохраны в России, может быть и в мире, где такая международная группа, международный проект.
It is a very large group of international scientists, and it is coordinated by the program in Russia. And there is a stationary in the region where we found nesting places in Lopatina.
Тоже место это упрощает работу с ним. И были созданы несколько программ
we came up with several programs
для того, чтобы сократить падение численности, как максимум
in order to
численность эту вырастить.
Protect this endemic bird.
Программа «Путевка в жизнь» — это основная программа.
The program it is called «Путевка в жизнь».
О том, что весной из гнезд собираются яйца.
So we collect the eggs and we count them, we make them. So we have small chicken of these birds, and they grow in stationary, and then they are released in the nature later on.
Эти пары делают компенсаторную, так называемую повторную кладку, то есть в итоге откладывают не 4, а 8 сезон.
We have not 4 eggs, but 8 eggs in a season.
Падение численности замедлилось, остановилось на сегодняшний день.
We managed to control the population, and now it is not decreasing. And we
в регионе, в районе Напыльгина, то есть птицы из этой программы.
So in the region of Napыльгина, we can say that they are quite successfully saved, and then we
популяция кулика-лопатня маленькая в неволе, которая уже вот
and we have some population of of these birds that are not in the nature, and they are not, they are in the captive, and they are breeding this bird, and it is one of the advanced projects in the region. We host here scientists every year. So they, some of them study the genome of the bird, and it is, and we see how it is, what is happening in the genetic level, and we need to work on the endangered species more and more. And starting from this year, we started the conversation program. Of the bird market, and it is a very so we started the monitoring of
большой угрозы из-за изменения климата. А в нашем регионе создалась уникальная ситуация, где Беринговое море не теплеет, в отличие от других мест.
So the thing is that the warming up is not happening in that area.
Опасности, мы надеемся, что базаров других соседних регионов Берингии, то есть Аляски и Чукотки, могут в итоге спасаться там. Это очень важный проект, тоже международный, нашим коммерческим обществом. Вот очень кратко о науке. Сейчас я природе. Чукотки сняты нами, и хочу сказать, что очень важна реализация знаний и о географии, и о биологии.
The knowledge that we gain from these areas is
quite vast,
and this is a scientific film, and this is about the film is about the migration of the birds, and it's very nice to think about the science tourism development in the area, and the area has a very low infrastructure, and it is not. So the ship goes to very remote areas, and so tourists, the scientists who are in this program, they lecture, they give lectures on the nature features of that area, and we hope that this tourism will develop further, and they will. So they will take the people to the forest, and this kind of tourism will be developing further. Thank you very much for your attention. Bye.
Yes, thank you very much. That was the famous photographer and filmer, and his presentation was also supplied by Ksenia Nosova, which we will now hear, and we will probably also look at a recorded presentation. But I can tell you that Ksenia has her 50th birthday today and is still joining us. Maybe if she is unmute herself, you can introduce yourself at the moment. She is both Russian and German and runs a tour agency in Germany, which focuses on Eastern European countries, and can very much tell us how she looks from a tourism perspective into our topic. Ksenia, do you want to say something while I am loading your presentation?
You can switch me on for a couple minutes because my presentation was made actually in Russian because the target audience is Russian-speaking audience. And I was given different examples of new tourism concepts all around the world. So I think it's more interesting to hear my speech in Russian with some pictures as to hear me now in English. I can definitely explain all my arguments in English as well, but I think it's better to see the video. And thanks a lot for your congratulations.
Thank you. Then we run your presentation here.
Thank you.
Specialized in thematic trips to with two colleagues, we created in Moscow a project that will be training. So the topic of my today's presentation is new concept of tourism in protected territories as contribution to the nature protection. So these are unfortunately the interpreter cannot hear the video sound very well, probably because the sound of computer was not shared. So I can read the we see some general changes and trends in tourism and the strategy and creation of new concepts of tourism in protected areas and the role of marketing as well as educational, social and charity projects. And local tour operators. No, unfortunately, when I start speaking, I cannot hear the sound of the video. I'm sorry. So these are the main aspects: sustainable tourism, responsible tourism, regenerative tourism. And the sustainable tourism is minimizing the harm for environments and responsible use of nature resources. Responsible tourism is a concept that considers long-term environmental, economic, and social impacts of traveling. And of course, developing nature-based tourism is underlain by scientific foundations. This is the national project of Vashlovani in Georgia. And what is
Я хотела бы привести тут вам два примера. Первый, то, что видите на картинке, это тот проект, который сейчас завершается в Национальном парке Башлавани в Грузии. Он создается в Ассоциации экотуризма Грузии. Как вы видите на картинках, здесь показаны на счетах не только флора и фауна, и не только горы.
And this project is quite multidisciplinary because you can see here are not only the flora or fauna, but also traditional activities.
В программах Национального парка Суома в Эстонии программы известны уже хорошо в Европе. Тут был создан как продукт 5-й сезон, то есть период разлива рек. Они был создан.
And the Soma Park in Estonia.
На каяках без сопровождения, ночные туры, вырубка традиционных лодок местно с населением. Я рекомендую вам заглянуть на их сайт.
They've created even a so-called fifth season. It's when the water is high in spring. They also have special tours for that.
проект уже более 30 лет. Это первый туристический объект в Коста-Рике, базирующийся на принципах устойчивого, а теперь и регенеративного туризма.
And this is Finca Rosa Blanca in Costa Rica, which is the first nature-based restorative and regenerative tourism area in Costa Rica.
Обслуживание, а также предоставление своим гостям аутентичных впечатлений от культуры Коста-Рики. Здесь персонал только из местных, также Финкороса инвестирует в образование и тренинги для местного населения.
They only have local staff and they also invest in the education of local people.
Может быть ярким примером для вовлеченности гостей в жизнь населения.
This
По биокофейной плантации, бёрдвотчинг, по вулканам, рафтинг и все возможные варианты активного отдыха в Коста-Рике.
This embraces all kinds of active recreation in Costa Rica.
Которые идут на благо самих национальных парков. Первый — это Эколодж-Финан, который находится в биосферном заповеднике Дана, втором по размеру национальном парке Иордании. Это первый проект такого размаха и такого рода, который в 2005 году был профинансирован Королевским обществом по охране окружающей среды.
An eco-lodge project in Jordan that was supported by the Royal Foundation of Jordan.
Вместе с бедуинами в пустыне.
And tourists here live together with Bedouins in the desert.
Находится рядом с деревней Харадс, где проживает всего 600 человек в устье реки Лулы. Гостиница была...
Another project, a hotel from Sweden near Harrods community, which has only 600 of population.
Идея здесь состоится в несезонности наблюдения и жизни среди дикой природы и сочетания дизайна, сервиса.
Here the key features are design and that you can stay there for all seasons and get different experiences.
Вовлечение. Создать те впечатления, за ценностью которые именно к вам и поедут. И здесь важна аутентичность. Также многие...
So what matters is authenticity and the impression. The impression is what people will look for when they choose where to go.
С местными продуктами. То есть как можно больше вовлекать местное население в жизнь национальных парков. Здесь я хотела бы указать...
And of course we have to involve local population in the life of national parks as much as possible.
Втором и Джеймсом Гиллером, которые явно могут подтолкнуть вас на собственное творчество и еще хорошо его проаргументировав. В нашем дигитальном мире гарантией результативности любой стратегии — это постоянное информационное освещение. Здесь я хотела бы привести пример компании GLP Films, которая занимается как раз storytelling и контент-маркетинг в области туризма с акцентом именно на экотуризм, который вы можете посмотреть. Их короткие фильмы указаны в списке линков и литературы.
And here are the links to those films and publications about ecotourism that the examples that I mentioned are also there.
Финансирование местного населения и без разрушения окружающей среды и нарушения экологического баланса. Поэтому и целевые инвестиции в социальные, благотворительные, образовательные продукты, они неизбежно приносят положительные результаты.
And of course, investment into ecological, social projects, they do yield results.
От коммерческих проектов, например, инвестировать один день в заповедники для классов начальных школ в ближайших населенных пунктах. И мы надеемся, что это принесет...
An example of good investment of such kind could be, for example, investing into one week or weekend for school children in some local eco hotel or eco location.
Sorry, Peter, I'm very surprised about this problem with the sound because it was quite a high quality. And I couldn't mix it up to talk now in English or Russian and with these few sentences which were possible to hear. So I don't know what was the problem, so I'm really sorry about this technical issue which just happened.
Yeah, sorry from my side as well. I tried to manipulate a little bit on the put it a little bit louder, but I don't know how it can come through.
Yeah, it was a high resolution, so I don't know what happened.
But anyway, thank you very much, Ksenia, and I wish you have a very good birthday party today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Out of that, and thank you so much. You decide yourself how long you can still be with us.
Thank you.
And we will have to look at the next film, which is coming from Elise Alifermé from.
I think there is a comment from the interpreter. I think the problem is that you should share the sound of your computer. It should be shared, because right now I was hearing it from your speakers of your computer.
But I did the same in the beginning. What do I need to do?
Just a second.
Probably I stop sharing and do it again. And put out the next presentation. At least we have now Elise Alifermé, who runs simultaneously a major event of the East Atlantic Flyway Youth Forum, which is a very important new forum where several organizations are engaged. In particular, many young people are engaged along the flyway of coastal birds, the so-called East Atlantic Flyway, which stretches from the Arctic in Canada, Greenland in the west to the Siberian Arctic of Russia in the east and goes down the whole coast of West Africa. And several young people along these countries engaging now to secure this flyway and think about what they can engage in. So I show you their film now. Hopefully the acoustic runs better.
Hello everyone, my name is Elise Alifermé. I am the coordinator at Youth Engaged Wetlands, a youth-led international network that is committed to the conservation and wise use of wetlands around the world. First of all, I'd like to thank the organization linking tourism and conservation for this wonderful opportunity to join this workshop and for the opportunity to present the most recent activity that we have ongoing, which is the East Atlantic Flyway Youth Forum. As I can't be present for the workshop on the day, I hope that this presentation will give you some useful insights and some discussion points for your discussion today. And I remain, of course, very happy to exchange by email with my email indicated on the slide. So today, I'm really excited to share with you the project that we've been working on now for several months, together with the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, the Common Wadden-Sea Secretariat, and the Migratory Birds for People program, as long with the support of the International Wadden-Sea School. Over the last 2 weekends, we have brought together youth from across the East Atlantic Flyway for the East Atlantic Flyway Youth Forum. The objective of this forum was to set the scene for coordinated youth engagement in wetland and migratory bird conservation across the flyway for increased intergenerational communication and cooperation. We have counted on the support of many people and organizations that have provided in-kind support by helping to find incredible speakers for the forum, acting as advisors, as moderators and facilitators, providing technical support, or also simply sharing the message about the Flyway Youth Forum through their networks and social media. We were also very lucky this year to count on the support of the Institute of Intercultural Management and Communication that has been helping us with interpretation in French and English during the forum, making it possible to have youth from across the Flyway participating in this forum. I would particularly like to highlight the valuable support of Peter Prokosch of Linking Tourism and Conservation as an advisor to the forum, in particular for his support in establishing greater links with the Arctic region for this forum. Now, the inspiration for this forum comes from the East Atlantic Flyway Youth Forum, We were really excited to collaborate last year with the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership Secretariat to bring the very first Flyway Youth Forum that ever existed. It was a very new format, and for us, it was a really interesting way to explore ways to connect young people, like-minded people, to create a community of young leaders across a flyway. And one of the outcomes of this first forum was that the youth participants called for increased collaboration in across the flyway and for more platforms for this kind of youth-friendly interaction and these spaces to discuss. So we're really eager to develop this second version of the Flyway Youth Forum, but the first time that it happens for the East Atlantic Flyway. I think it's particularly interesting to note that for both flyways, the Arctic plays an important role for these migratory waterbirds, and it would be an interesting point of topic of conversation for this particular workshop. So the forum is spread over 2 weekends and is entirely virtual. As I'm recording this presentation, tomorrow we will start the last weekend of the forum. It's available in English and French, as I mentioned, and in future sessions, we'd love to include Russian as well to allow for greater representation of youth across the Arctic region. The forum is targeted at youth aged 18 and 30 years old that are living or working along the flyway and are already active in wetland and or migratory waterbird conservation, as well as those that are simply curious about it. What we really wanted is to provide this platform for like-minded youth to connect beyond borders, including virtual borders, to discuss the priorities of the flyway and start to develop some actions to improve the situation for wetlands and migratory waterbirds. The forum has 4 objectives. The first one is networking. We want to connect all these young people. They're from different countries, but all have one thing in common, this flyway. The second one is learning. We through a series of presentations, both from youth and from experts across the flyway, we wanted to provide this learning platform where the youth participants could learn from each other and learn from partners in the flyway about the priorities, the threats of the flyway, and what can be done about it. The next objective is collaborating. We hope to, through a series of workshops, to bring these amazing young people together to think collaboratively together with partners across the region. What can we do together to solve these issues and to contribute towards resolving some of the flyway's biggest issues? And finally, our 4th objective is activating. We don't want the Flyway Youth Forum to end on Sunday, this upcoming Sunday. We want the motivation, the discussions, the energy to continue beyond the Flyway Youth Forum and to inspire greater action for the Flyway. With that in mind, we developed an ambassador program made up of 12 youth participants that are going to be creating a declaration and an action plan for the flyway after the forum ends. Now, the forum has had, for us, a great success. We've gathered each day about 40 participants from across the flyway, and we've had really lively discussions, especially around these 3 topics. The topics that we are currently exploring are the common perspectives around the importance of migratory birds in wetlands in our cultural history. What is the role of youth in the conservation, protection, and restoration of flyway wetlands? And how can we increase the opportunities to learn from and help each other along the flyway? We've had a number of inspiring presentations from young people and partners across the flyway, from the Bijagos archipelago to the Netherlands, and also a fantastic presentation from Mia from CAF, talking about all these, the different opportunities that we have to save wetlands and migratory waterbirds across the flyway. We've also learned from Matthew from the Philippines, who told us more about his work in mangrove conservation. So these different presentations really give us an interesting illustration of the energy and the activities and all the youth-led initiatives that are taking place across the Flyway and are very encouraging in order to work toward the conservation of the Flyway and its important ecosystems. Finally, I just want to say again, I appreciate the space to present today, given that the connection that this forum has with the topic of the workshop. In particular, I believe that young people have an important role to play and are already playing an active role in implementing this 30 by 30 goal of extending by 2030 the world's marine and terrestrial protected areas to at least 30%. Through this forum, we can see that the youth of the East Atlantic Flyway are already well aware of the importance of the Flyway and including the Arctic region and the wetlands, the wetland ecosystems that are spread across the Flyway and are critical for the survival of migratory water birds and for a multitude of services. Many youth are already taking action to protect these wetland ecosystems and beyond and supporting the designation of protected areas. As a critical part of the East Atlantic Flyway, the protection of marine and terrestrial areas in the Arctic is definitely essential. And as the youth of the Flyway Youth Forum are currently discussing this upcoming weekend, I'd like to extend some of the questions that they're going to be talking about over to you in this particular workshop. And to encourage you to explore the important role that youth have in supporting and implementing the 30 by 30 goal. On that note, I thank you again for your time, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes of this really interesting workshop. Thank you very much.
This is really very inspiring what the young people are doing here. And I tried also and encourage only the Northern Forum's Youth Forum also to connect to the East Atlantic Youth Forum. I think there's a great potential that young people from Russia down to Africa work well together and protecting and also increasing the chain of protected areas, which partly exist already in form of national parks like you have in Bijago Islands or in the Bantagang in Mauritania or the International Wadden Sea. And we are coming now also to an area which is in particular important for the breeding shorebirds and waterbirds in the Arctic, and that's the Taimyr Peninsula. We have now Natalia Maligina from the Ural University, which I know also from old days when she was still a researcher at the Taimirski Zapovietnik on Taimyr. And she runs since several years an initiative that the existing strict protected areas, the Zapovietniks which exist on Taimyr, the Taimirski Zapovietnik or the Great Arctic Reserve in the north, should be connected through a whole transect of protected areas and could be linked also up with a new national park. And that could be a very great initiative also for the Northern Forum and from others which are taking place in this meeting. Natasha, do you want to introduce yourself while I opening up your presentation? And I guess you will speak in Russian and the presentation shows pictures in English. Natasha, are you there? I had seen you, but probably you should unmute yourself now. Yes, now you're there.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Что ж, я начинаю. And we will focus on East Taimyr. Slide 1, East Taimyr. This is a place where a wonderful project was born. It's a short trip to the history, but it's also our future.
Are you still?
Can I continue?
Yes, please do.
This is slide number 2. And slide number 3. So this is a collage of the substantiations and reasons why this initiative was born. Each position you can see in our presentation, and also presentation from the last forum in Yakutsk. Slide number 4, please. Our initiative had a very difficult way to go. Not many colleagues accepted it, and many didn't understand us and criticized us. But 30 years have passed, and here is the new era. And this new era brought us new horizons for our ideas. Slide number 5. Look at this picture. This is the fauna, the biodiversity, this wonderful East Timor that used to be there before 5 or 10 years ago. And slide number 6. And now this is our present, and soon the future will come. Currently, the East Timor is intensively developed from all sides. Industrialization is advancing from everywhere, from the sea, from the land. Only a small glance at the table and you will see what we will have there in 2024. And you can see it in the detail in our publications and at the website of Rosneft oil extracting company. Slide number 7. So what the industry brings from the point of view of nature protecting technologies and management. For example, in East Timor, we used to have a very good zaказnik that protected fauna, especially birds, water birds. Right now, there is no such protected area, no such zaказnik. It doesn't exist because 70% of the industrial area is located within the territory. It means there is no protection there anymore. Slide number 8. On the other side, Rosneft company, who is developing this territory, and their representatives, they understand perfectly well that protected areas are integral part of development of even industrial society. And that is why, of course, they work on creating some nature protection projects. Recently, they launched a project in 2014, Evenkian reindeer. Okay, let's wait for some other good nature protecting projects from Rosneft. Timor National Park initiative. It's a completely new structure for East Timor with its own features, structure, regulation mechanisms, and infrastructure. This is the only model that can bring balance between nature protection and the industrial development. Unfortunately, currently, and it proves that we are right, currently we have an example, which is Gdański National Park in the territory of Yamal Peninsula. Until 2019, it was a zapovednik, protected area, and now it is turned into national park. And our initiative was a pioneer, a pilot idea, and the life has showed now that we were right. And the idea was right, and creation of this national park proved that we did right thing. So what are the 2 points for development? First of all, industrialization of Taimyr is going on. It should be combined with a very good model of nature protection. And the second point is that we already have such an example, which means that Taimyr National Park initiatives is a good example of high-quality prototyping. Thank you for your attention, and please do contact me anytime.
Thank you very much, Natasha. And I hope the whole Northern Sustainable Development Forum will have a look at Taimyr and this initiative, which also could be a good contribution to the climate challenges, because Taimyr is the largest Eurasian continuous tundra area ecosystem, and a complete transect from north to south of protected areas, including a national park, a new national park, would provide also the opportunity that nature can move within these boundaries. And I think there's still enough wilderness and nature left on Taimyr to create that huge transect. So thank you, Natalia. We are coming now to Magdalena Moore and switching over to Canada and have a look what Canadians are doing and how they are supporting the 3030 goal. Magdalena, you will move your slide.
I'll share my screen, please, if I may.
Yes, you can share your screen yourself.
Yeah, I can. So you share. Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'd like to speak on, and it's going to be very high level. So, but there's aspects I'm very welcome to, open to speaking on later if it's at all of interest. So I'm going to talk a bit about some different strategies and then the Canadian experience, particularly looking under the guise of sustainable tourism, which is very similar to what we've really been hearing about today. It's just another way of phrasing it. My presentation is part of a team effort, and I particularly want to thank Kyle Lineweber, who provided some of the GIS-based graphics that you're going to see. So I'd like to first talk about Canada and Canada's support for the 30 by 30 initiative. And Canada has supported the initiative to protect 30% of all its land and waters by 2030, and has specifically called on large countries, including Russia, to do so. And as you're aware, Russia is the largest country in the world, and Canada is the second largest. Canada has some internal goals of protecting 25% of its lands and its 3 oceans by 2025 as well. And one area I should try to mention is it's going to be probably a very strong role for the Arctic, as you'll see just from some of the subsequent points I'll make. So in the presentation, I wanted to highlight conservation in Arctic and Northern Canada and the very specific roles played by land claims and also Indigenous protected conservation areas. And I'm also going to refer to some globally recognized top 100 sustainable tourism destinations in the Arctic, consistent with the UN GSTC sustainable destination criteria. So one of the things that makes Canada quite unique, and I'll explain why in one moment, is really our northern land claims. And so I've given you a graphic here that looks at them. And what's interesting about these are future governance structures. Under Canada's constitution, these are constitutionally protected. So they really create the future governance parameters in these areas. And each of them creates a unique regime within these areas for conservation, land use, often also Indigenous uses. and conservation and protected areas. And as part of the claim, many of these created protected areas, following the implementation of all these claims, there are further self-governance arrangements and also further cooperation arrangements, which I'm going to be highlighting in my presentation. So this is really this is a GIS based map that I'm very grateful for Kyle for putting together. But what I'd like to just look at is some different examples here. We have one that is the MPA in the northern area around Ellesmere Island, which is actually going to meet approximately 6% of Canada's goal under the 30 by 30 target. We have examples in the Beaufort Sea and Mackenzie Delta, which I'll discuss later, and which also is one of the globally recognized top 100 destination. And that includes protected areas and also a very large ocean management area that coincides with the land claim. We actually have the Decho and Ekecho, which are two areas in the Mackenzie Valley, which is a resource management structure set up under a Dene Métis claim for the Mackenzie Valley, and which already are considering and implementing sustainable tourism. And then we lastly have a group of islands within the Hudson Bay. So this is really going to give you the visual approximation of what I'm going to talk about next. So if we look at what we have first of all, the areas I'd really like to focus on are the top 100 sustainable tourism destinations. The Mackenzie Delta Beaufort Sea coincides with one of the land claims for the Inuvialuit. And the Inuvialuit were already very active in this area beginning in 1984 when that was put in place. I was involved for a period of about 10 to 12 years. And what's happened initially, there was a beluga management plan, which then led to the establishment of 3 marine protected areas that were established under Canadian law and a large ocean management area. So an earlier example, when we then look at the 2 different regions set up in the Northwest Territories, which is the Decho Akecho, this was really based initially on a Mackenzie Valley designation under another regional land claim, but where they're also going with independent governance arrangements with the Indigenous people, and where there's a very strong interest in tourism. I mentioned that there's a very large component from the area around Ellesmere Island, and this marine protected area was established in 2019 and currently meets about 5.5% of the Canadian marine target. And if we look at this area, it's actually established to meet many objectives, including to deal with climate change and the monitoring and adapting to climate change, and also includes larger polynya areas. And where there's a very strong role with adjacent Inuit peoples. If we look at now the third one I'm going to refer to, this is actually called an Indigenous Protected Conservation Area. So it's consistent with the claims because, as I mentioned earlier, you have governance structures, but it's superimposed on top of it. So this is very interesting. The islands are called also the Ottawa Islands. These are actually within the Nunavut territorial region, but actually then have a Quebec Inuit people that will be dealing with monitoring and management of it. And this is really the first of what has been foreseen to be as up to 27 Indigenous protected conservation areas in Canada, as spoken by Trudeau pre-election and now post-election since he's back in power. One of the interesting comments that recently came out with a CBD report was really the UN recognizing the really unique role of the IPCA in Northern Canada as a potentially bright spot in what may be a very globally bleak approach to conservation. So now I'd like to really talk about something which I thought might be quite interesting, and it really ties into both the potential recommendations coming out of this workshop, as well as some of the earlier speakers. First of all, really, if we look at both Russia and Canada, we're very large Arctic countries with very extensive Arctic coastlines and river deltas. And interesting example is the Mackenzie River Delta and Valley, which underpins several of the areas I've highlighted, and the Lena River Delta. We also have a very abundant nature and strong conservation traditions, potentially in some of the regions and local communities and with Indigenous people. And that's really been highlighted by some of the comments that have been made today, really for the Saukha region as well. that there's very extensive and parallel Canadian efforts and Russian efforts to protect very specific types of ecosystems, such as polynyas, which was referred to earlier, and also really to have a strong engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities. In Canada, interestingly enough, and this is something I'd probably like to, before saying it definitively, it might be quite interesting to consider, but much of the 30 by 30 dedication of both terrestrial and marine areas may come from the Arctic. And part of that is there's a very strong conservation tradition and protected areas already. And also, as you can see from the maps that were presented earlier, this is the area that has some of the greatest wilderness spaces that is not necessarily subject to development. So we might find that many of the 30% may be met in the Arctic. And we already have, as we see here in one example, 5.5% actually met in one area. And the last point really is the whole opportunity to have further conservation cooperation under the Arctic Council with bilateral or regional initiatives involving Canada and Russia, because there's a very extensive history of this, particularly in the Arctic, predating the Arctic Council and occurring simultaneously, and through such expert forums and regional local forums as the Northern Sustainable Development Forum. And so with that, I'd like to thank you. I want to show you a couple of images here, and that would be really the combination between and the comparison between the Lena and the Lena River Delta and the Mackenzie Delta. The very top one on the right is the Mackenzie Delta, and the one, I apologize, the very top one on the right is the Lena Delta, and the one below is the Mackenzie. And so we have a lot of very similar terrain.
Recording in progress.
Particularly across these areas. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to be responding to questions now or into the future. And I also just mentioned that I come from 2 jurisdictions, partly because of shared citizenship. So I bring in the UK perspective and the Scottish perspective, as well as Canada.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. This is great. And as you said, Canada and Russia has much in common, both the most and largest Arctic countries and also countries in the whole world. I did not see whether Vladimir Vasilyev has come back from his panel session. He at least recommended to me that we have 2 additional speakers, Irina Rybakina. Is she there, and would she like to speak? I think I see you there now. If you switch on your voice, then, oh, there I see also Vladimir. Hello. Then Irina, you have the floor. Are you showing any slides or?
Yes, we will be showing some slides.
Okay, you manage from your side.
That. While we are turning on the presentation, I would like to thank the colleagues for giving me this opportunity to speak here. It's a very important one for us. And the festival I will be telling about, it's an event that will be held in August 2022 under the aegis of Russian chairmanship in Arctic Council. You can see here a big map where we would like to show you how close Russia and the USA are. It's not 12 hours flight. It's only 40 minutes from Providenia to Nome, or from easternmost point, ULN of Russia, to Wales in USA. It's only 86 kilometers. Actually, you can walk this distance, and our famous friend Paolo Venturini, he can run it maybe in a couple of leaps. So we wanted to show the world that these are not 2 extreme points of 2 countries. Actually, these are very important points for the Arctic, that at some point these should come together in a very wonderful event, important event for both countries and for the entire country, where we will close this circle of cooperation, and this will be the bilateral tourist communication and route for the people from all around the world. There are lots of crazy travelers around the world who set themselves some goals of visiting some special points on the planet. There are not many of such destinations, but everyone wants to go there, and it's quite difficult. You have to have the willpower, have to be strong. Of course, you have to have money and a team. And that's why we want to hold it in Chukotka, this event in Chukotka, because Chukotka, translated from Chukchi, means the world of real people. And we want to make this event equal to climbing Kilimanjaro, for example. Iditarod, a dog sled competition, which is a beautiful representation of a dog and human team. Again, another destination is Dakar Rally, North Pole Marathon, Sahara, Everest, crossing Atlantics. So we want to give another destination for these crazy travelers to cross Bering Strait. And what should they use to do that? People traveled actually for thousands of years using their leather kayaks, and these kayaks, as a part of knowledge and skills of our people, we would like to use as a symbol of this transition and crossing of Bering Strait. So the concept of this event, we would love to include several things in there. Of course, we want to have a festival called Beringian Games, which will be a kind of a summit of indigenous peoples, of sports and cultural events. Also, we want to see some ocean cruise liners there. We know that in Russia, Chukotka is one of the popular destinations. So it's not one of the popular destinations, and we want to show the beauty of Chukotka traditions, knowledge to Russian people and people from around the world. And number, of course, what vessels we should use to cross the Bering Strait. Traditional leather kayaks, and in order to provide this link from past to the future, we suggest athletes also to take part in this and use special, unique ocean oared boats. We will start registration soon, where athletes could apply, provide their resumes. Of course, not everyone will be eligible for this, because 86 kilometers is just a number, but in fact we have wind, we have waves, currents, so it takes some strong people to participate. I will try to be brief, and we would love to invite everyone to this festival, everyone who's interested in our history, traditions of Russia and Chukotka. So thank you so much for listening about our project, and welcome to Chukotka.
Thank you very much, Irina. And is there one more speaker from Chukotka? Vladimir, are you now with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
From Chukotka.
Yes, Alexei. Alexei Bakhrushev.
This is Alexei Vakhrushev.
I'm Alexei Vakhrushev.
I'm Alexei Vakhrushev.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about our culture and social initiative, a project, and it is an investment in the development of tourism in Chukotka in the northeastern part of Russia. So I will put my presentation on. So I will be very short. So here we speak about the production of feature film in Chukotka. So which will activate touristic potential of this territory, but it is more than just a film. It is so the action takes place in the northeast of Siberia, and the film is not just a film. It is a project that is aimed to popularize Chukotka in the whole world. And you know that the residents of Chukotka are taking part in this production of this film, and all the businesses and individuals and organizations of Chukotka, they will they will take part in the production of this film, and they will produce and make authentic settlements that used to be in the 19th century, and in future after the film this will be a kind of a park that will be used for the development of the tourist destination, and of course it will build some kind of an ethno park. It is also will the film will also be used as an advertisement of Chukotka for the whole world, because people will get to see through this film. People will get to see the beauty of this land, and so for the development. So how I can speak about the statistics, how the films actually influenced and influenced into the development of the tourism in the other in the respective lands, in the respective territories. So in Russia there is a film Leviathan, Russian Leviathan, and now it is becoming a touristic destination, and it is in the Arctic area of Russia, and they are planning to increase the tourists to come, tourist flock to up to 100,000 people, and they are investing a lot of money. So in the base of this, I mean, this film actually talks about the myths of the Eskimo people. So the picture, I mean, the film speaks about Eskimo people as well as the Pamor people. And these are two civilizations, great civilizations of the Arctic region. And these representatives of these great cultures are depicted in this film. So here we are talking about the meeting of these two cultures, and it is these I am myself, I'm an Eskimo as well, and I know it as I am the representative of this nation, and I know it very well, and we want to show our culture in its most beauty to the whole world. And as for Pamor people, they came to this part. These are the Orthodox Russian people who came in the 9th to 11th centuries, and they would go from river to river, and you will see in the film how the Russians came to be in these lands, and this film will also depict this unique, beautiful landscape, and nobody probably particularly saw have never seen any beauty like that on a big screen. And the authenticity with the help and also the people indigenous people of this land will be the main part of this film as well. So here we have the filmmakers and their competencies, and Pavel Novikas is one of the best art director, and he is able to build such settlement, and this will be used after the film is released. So the authentic objects are not there because those tourists they come, even if they come, they lack this opportunity, and there is a deficit of authentic objects on these territories. Those because the authentic objects were dismounted, and they were demolished by the government during the Cold War from both sides, and they used to use those Chukotka people used to make they used to make houses out of the stones and the other materials, and I think that it is a great disadvantage that Chukotka people cannot actually show their own culture to the whole world, and they don't have it, and it would be wonderful to resurrect and to build this. And this is our concept, how it can be, how it can look, and in the end, this will be an ethnographic park, and of course, there will be a nice infrastructure built around this park, and with electricity provided, and there will be there will be administrative buildings, and of course there will be so we are looking into the very high tech and new tech technology buildings, and so there will be like two neighborhoods. One is very traditional, and the other one is very modern. And I hope that it will be, and I'm sure it will be very popular, and it will attract a lot of people to come, and with all the programs that will educate people and as well as entertain people. And we just want to, go back to the history via building this kind of traditional village, and so it will build some kind of a magnet for people to come and to immerse themselves in the culture. So it will be built not far from the settlement Ekvakinot, and there is flights going like 5 days a week, and it's a unique city, and people say that it is northern Sochi, and we will have an exposition that will show the Eskimo people as well as the Pamor people, and this is how we see. It's 5 kilometers from Ekvakinot, and in summer it will, like, the road will take only 10-15 minutes. Also for people's there will be the replicas, all the transport means like traditional boats, and we will build this kind of boats, and those who will come to visit, they will they will have the opportunity to use this kind of boats to see the shoreline. So if you speak about the costumes, we will make traditional costumes. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people who can sew this kind of traditional clothing, and via this film we will resurrect the traditional way of sewing this kind of costumes, and we will teach young women and those who have this traditional way of knowledge. They will give this knowledge to a younger generation, and the casting will be done among the traditional, I mean, among the indigenous peoples, and the Russian Pamors. The Russians will be like the leading actors and actresses of the Russian film industry. Will take part in this film, and I think that this so the motto of this film would be like taken from the words of Bogoslovska, who is a biologist, was a biologist herself, and she worked a lot on the preserving the biodiversity. And so she says that when we preserve the nature, we'll preserve the culture, and it is actually vice versa too. If we protect the culture, we will preserve the nature as well. So this will lead us to protecting of Chukchi people that reside in the shorelines, and the traditional knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexei. We have now midnight at your place in Yakutsk. I'm quite impressed that you from Chukotka, you are physically there in Yakutsk, and it should be early morning for you in Chukotka, I guess. We have been running this workshop now for 2 hours and had an extremely dense program with very exciting and very valuable and high-level presentations, which we would like to use also further in order to meet our focus, which was to promote the 30 by 30 goal and talk about how tourism is also can contribute to this. As we are so much proceeded in this in the time, I propose, as we have also prepared a little bit a conclusion of this workshop, taking into account what we expected will be presented in this workshop, and have put it into a form of a declaration. And I can briefly go through this here at the end of this meeting in replacing a longer discussion, and find out whether you would be happy to support this declaration, which would be then endorsed by the speakers and the participants of this meeting. And then the whole Northern Sustainable Development Forum may discuss whether they can include also our text into a longer and comprehensive declaration or resolution, or what you plan from the entire Congress of the Northern Sustainable Development Forum. Vladimir, are you still there? And should we just do it this way as you recommended? Yes, Vladimir is still there? Probably not. It's very late now in Yakutsk. I'm extremely impressed that people having the whole day be staying in this workshop, in this huge Congress, are still awake and following us. Therefore, as I have sent this draft recommendation to all the speakers and the participants, which I know of, I would then not take the time to go through every sentences, but ask you all whether you can agree to that we are making this input into the entire Congress. And if anyone is having a major opposition against that or a major addition, then she or he should just take the word and say something. I see nobody raising his hands or her hands or saying something. Then I would like to conclude that we can at least give this conclusion, which I heard also from the presentations. Everyone was quite convinced that we need the 30 by 30 goal being supported by all nations in the world, in particular the Arctic nations. And I think you gave also some indications that tourism should play a major role to support this and to show also specific cases how that can work. And if people want to express that in concrete, what it could mean that tourism is supporting protected areas and this huge goal, they could contact us as linking tourism and conservation, and could profile that as an LT&C example. You can see that on our website, what that should mean. But again, the question whether anyone wants to have a word on this, or whether we should conclude the quite condensed workshop at this stage.
Vladimir is raising his hand.
Yeah, then Vladimir, you probably can also conclude it, as you have been in the end participating.
Да, спасибо, Питер. Конечно.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pity that we had two overlapping important events, and I see that the list of speakers is just brilliant. Magdalena Muir, I haven't seen you for ages. It's so nice to see you, and I hope we will continue our communication later. Regarding this resolution, it's quite big, quite long. So maybe the final resolution of the entire forum is not very long document, because we have 75 events, and from each we take maybe 1 to 3 sentences. But still, we accept this one, we approve this one as a separate resolution and to use it in our further work. And each one of you can send Peter their considerations, thoughts, what exactly from this resolution we should take in a very condensed form of up to 3 sentences into the final overall resolution of the forum. Because we're holding the forum and this webinar for the 3rd time already, and I would love to see some very concrete project that we would implement and launch altogether this year or maybe next year. The last presentation, I heard it, and I see that you have some ideas. Maybe let's choose something, 1 to 2, 3 projects, and maybe start just working and just show that we can not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk. So I hope it will come true. And thank you so much for your continuous efforts and your contribution to this exciting domain. So please let us do some concrete steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. It was a great pleasure to design this workshop together with you and to be for the 3rd time involved in your Northern Sustainable Development Forum. In the first year, I had the pleasure to be there physically, and I hope that in the future this can happen again. I wish you all a good night and that the further Congress is developing so smoothly and so importantly further. Thank you all very much, and I guess Vladimir and we both conclude now and say goodbye to everyone. Okay, goodbye everyone, and good night, and wherever you stay. In Canada, it's more in the morning.
I start my day now. It's Magdalena.
Yes, you're on the other extreme. Thank you, Magdalena. Okay, goodbye everyone.
Thank you, Peter and everybody.